Boom.
Hey, this is Ryan, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Shout out to Mike Abramowitz who linked us together. A couple of veterans doing new things in their world. It's always fun to talk to someone else who has served. I guess, let me just ask you this. Now, I don't want this to be a political question, but when you look at the difference between the last regime and this regime in terms of the military, do you at all care? Like, do you get interested in someone like, Lloyd Austin versus Pete Hegseth? Does that in any way interest you? Or when you look back, like, what did we do? Our time, that kind of thing. Because this is the first time during my career, there wasn't some multi-star general who I had no connection to at all. I used to work, with Lloyd Austin in a building. He would come in sometimes and we'd give him briefings and everything. But he didn't know me. I knew some of his staff and everything. And so it's almost like this person who, I had no connection to came in. I don't know. So to me, what do I care, right? But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Oh, great question, Pete. I'm not very politically inclined one way or the other. A political answer, just not really my area of expertise. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Hegseth was a former Teams guy, wasn't he? Was he Delta or he was Army Special Forces or something to that effect?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know his specific bio. That's how much it doesn't matter to me. Some folks get riled up about it. And I guess I'll just say, he's got some very specific ideas that kind of take us back in time, like, hey, let's just win. I don't know how we do that in modern times. It's easy to say that. I've worked with women in combat. I've seen young, tiny women rack around in a Ma Deuce. I'm like, that lady's in combat, smoking a Marlboro, racking around up in a turret. What's more combat than that? And she's an MP, So some of that stuff, I'm like, is that political? But I do feel like we did need a refocusing because we've gotten a little corporate. That's just my thing, but I don't know. Again, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I mean, when I was active duty, I was a neurologist. I was stationed at Camp Lejeune for most of my career, minus the training, which obviously takes a long time to go through medical school and residency. Sure. But I was really there to provide care. My job was to keep Marines and sailors combat effective, and I freaking loved it, man.
Right.
Nothing more motivating than waking up every day and working with high-performing people who are doing a very specific job that most people don't ever get to see or appreciate. And get them back to be on the battlefield. I mean, whether that was a peripheral nerve injury or traumatic brain injury, a migraine, I mean, any number of things that we dealt with was just a great time.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've had a couple of medical physicians on the show, and it's a very unique role. If I'm going to go out, you're going to help me. I am a combat spy, so I'm going to get out and go off the camp every day and talk to people. I'm going to bear a load. I'm going to get no sleep. Impossible to get reliable, good sleep. So I'm surviving. If I'm lucky, I'm going to get 6, but most commonly I'm going to get less than 4. And it's going to be busy, crowded sleep, And so I never had the benefit of having someone like you say, I will tell you, I was deployed to Bosnia. My hips were killing me. We walk around on these rocky camps with mud, and your boots are heavy, and so it's just jacking your body up. But I was a pretty good athlete, right? And so I went to the doctor, and I'm like, "Hey, man, my hips are killing me." And he said to me, and this is him being this will make sense to you. This is him being a good military medical doctor. He's like, "Listen, Pete, you've got a great job. You get to leave the camp every day. Most everybody wants to be you. You're a spy. Yeah, I know your hips hurt. You probably are getting hurt. Someone else is going to get hurt if it take your place. It's up to you. If you want, I can send you back to the flagpole. You can get some rest, and maybe you won't have a permanent injury. But the fact is, you're probably getting hurt permanently, and you have to deal with it later in your life. What do you want to do?"
Yeah, I mean, there are so many ethical struggles I had when I was an active duty physician for that very reason, because as if you get pulled for, I don't know, any number of injuries or complaints, I mean, first off, there's the kind of that hypermasculine bro military culture that's like, oh, you're not good enough to hack it, right? I mean, who cares?
Right.
My hips hurt, my knees hurt. I mean, I'm carrying a 60-pound ruck, whatever, kind of quit crying and get in line. There's that whole element to deal with. And to your point, then there's the element of you've got the rest of your life to live once you're out of the service. And I mean, I probably should know what the average disability rating is of a veteran when they come out. But I mean, certainly people that have seen combat, I mean, it's through the roof, right? Because of what you guys all have to deal with. So yeah, that was always a conversation, because people would be referred to me typically for, evaluation for a med board, which, for your audience, if people don't know what a med board is, it's a medical separation board. It's the formal process we have to outboard an active duty service member if they have a career-ending injury of some sort or diagnosis. But that's as much a personal and political game as it is a medical game, because you get these men and women that are 17, 18, however many years into a career, and if they're within a year of retirement, but they get med boarded out, then they lose their retirement pension, and it's like, that's crazy. I mean, to think about that. So always a really tough decision, and I'm glad that you at least had some guidance at some point on, like, hey, here are your options, as opposed to, I'm going to make that decision for you. I think that's part of the role as a military physician that we should always have in mind.
But it is contrary in a lot of ways. You work for the commander. Your job is to make sure that the mission gets accomplished. And in most cases, you have very little say in that, right? But in this case, this doctor, by the way, I worked, and I didn't belong to them, but I was attached to a medical brigade. And there are doctors everywhere, right? And so I had the ability to go talk to them in private. And his advice basically was, make a decision. We can do something. You're going to get hurt anyhow. And I'm saying the same thing I said before, but also, more importantly to me, the next guy's going to get hurt. This isn't gentle work. And this is what taught me a long time ago. And I talk about Pete Hegseth and all these guys. When we send people to war, all of them get injured, whether it's immediate, obvious, or anything else. You can't reliably say the standard is people don't get hurt. Even if you're on a camp the entire time, there's injury going on all over the place.
Yes. No, you're 100% correct about that. And often it's invisible injury. And that's a lot of what I dealt with, were the cognitive injuries that were maybe more subtle and that really affect people's, not only their performance and battlefield readiness in terms of what you can see as far as how they walk or how they move or shoot a rifle, but the emotional injuries and their ability to think and stay sharp and go out in the field and not receive enough rest. They're dealing with any number of orthopedic issues. It's a really unique challenge to know how to walk that line with people. For somebody to be able to push to their limit, but not so much that their body can't handle the mission. All the while knowing, of course, as you mentioned, that the next person that comes to replace them, they're just as worried. That's why they're there, right? I mean, you ask anybody that's a frontline soldier, how can you run towards gunfire? Well, it's for my guy next to me. My guy next to me. That's how it is. Again, just a really inspiring group of people to have had the privilege of working with. And I really do miss that, honestly.
I don't know another line of work where you are the arbiter of malingering, and saying, oh, this guy's going to deploy and there's no choice, and that person in their mind have absolutely sold themselves. Look, this is the Marines, right? In some cases, these guys love being Marines. Yeah. And it's time to go. And now, contrary to everything, at least they thought they bought into, they're not going to go, or they want to go but can't go medically, or they chicken, whatever it is, right? All of that. There's a lot in that, and you might be making the call that ultimately, gosh, I hate to be unfair to you, but you might be destroying this person's life. Maybe they are too fragile mentally. Maybe home is too fragile. But hey, your body works. You got to go, right? And that's got to be heavy weight.
It really is. And I always hope that I made the right decision for people and with them. And that was always the conclusion I would arrive to, is similar to the way the physician asked you, like, which path do you want? I would try to clarify goals as best I could, but really where my judgment has to step in is, the goal is almost always get me back out there. Right. And
right.
If I truly believe,
that's another problem, but yes.
Right. Motivating, but at the same time, part of my job is to use my judgment and to say, well, I don't think that you are, battlefield ready in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, ever, whatever that looks like. And that's a heartbreaking conversation to have to somebody who's dedicated their life to service. I could think of countless stories. Like, there's a gentleman who was a patient of mine who was trying out for MARSOC, the Raiders, the Marine Corps Special Operations Command. And he kept losing consciousness while they were doing their water training. He'd hold his breath, he'd go under, he'd pass out, guys have to pull him out. And it kept happening. Well, long story short, he ended up getting an MRI of his brain and his neck, and he had an undiagnosed case of multiple sclerosis and never knew that. And he had a lesion in his spinal cord that was right next to the heart rate and the breathing centers, right where the brainstem and the spinal cord meet. And that was basically when he would lose an adequate level of oxygen, he just would go lights out. And I was like, dude, I mean, we can treat the MS, but I mean, you are on the razor's edge of performance that most people would never even think about getting close to. And your body's failing you because of this just unlucky spot. And so we had to med board and get him out. He was devastated. So that's one of many cases I could think of, but knowing again how to toe that line with people was always really tough.
Did you deploy at all, or did you remain at Lejeune mostly?
No, mostly Lejeune. My only technical deployment was on the USNS Comfort in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So they did, I'm sure you might imagine, the military response to COVID was less than organized, in my opinion, without being political. But we had these expeditionary medical forces, or EMFs, we were all a part of. So kind of a bunch of doctors, corpsmen, nurses, supplies that would be designed to just go drop into a combat zone. And COVID effectively was that, with just a viral enemy, not one that shoots guns. So I got sent down to Florida. We were staging for New Orleans and Texas, and kind of where were all the hot spots that were popping up in spring of 2020. And then I actually got sent back to Lejeune, and then finally got sent up to New York on the Comfort. So that was really it. I mean, never any combat zone time. But I will say that being on the front lines of a new pandemic that nobody in healthcare was trained for, and seeing how many just thousands of people were dying every day, every week, with no protection, no vaccines. We just had a mask, and that was it. Right. That was some pretty scary stuff at the time. So that was very different, and very to get through. We have a short memory, I think, as a culture and a country, and I mean that was only almost 5 years ago to the month, quite frankly. That was a terrible time for the world, that especially through what we had to go through. So
there's a lot to be said about what you just said. And one of the things I would say is we serve at the pleasure of whomever, right? And then we go when they tell us to go. And so whether it's the Comfort or it's Fallujah, you're prepared to go do whatever. And one thing that folks don't get about the vast majority of veterans is like, it doesn't matter like where you go. Did you do your job? Were you great at it? Right. And that's really the standard. If you went and you did, I don't know. Do you know Dr. Donnelly Wilkes? Do you know him?
I don't.
He gets his white jacket, right? And there's all this complexity in here. So he gets his white jacket and like, by the way, you know how you're in the military? Well, we're going to need you right now. And then he forward deploys to a forward, not clinic, forward response area. So they're as close as they can get to the battle to provide minutes, seconds, distance help, And so it's one thing that you guys are all super smart and you can handle anything, but you're not trained for that reliably to deal with all of that. Because now there's a picture of him. It's like an award-winning picture. If it's a bunch of Marines laying hands on a dead Marine, and he's in the middle of that scrum because their friend had just died. Mm-hmm. And so, you're doing a doctor and you're making life and death calls. That you probably have your head around, but it's the weight of each one of these things, of hearing that Humvee roaring towards you. And it's like go time. You're in the batter's box and they're throwing 120 with break, and that's intense to put on you, to know how to deal with it, to how to be great in those moments. It's very hard. And so again, like this goes back to you've got the white coat, you do the oath to swear in to protect, but also you're swearing in to serve a commander who is like, no, if he wants to come back, he's going to come back. And you're like, that's against my medical advice. Like, fuck your medical advice. This guy's coming, there's all these conflicting things in your world. It's amazing to me what you guys do and how calm you can be.
Well, yes. And thank you for the acknowledgement. There's a lot of, I think, desensitization through training that you have to go through to become a provider. Similarly, if you're infantry or anything in the military, there's the same training pipeline you have to go through to know what to expect. And you're right, doctors don't, at least the Navy doctors, I was Navy, Navy doctors don't get that kind of training. I mean, we don't get combat training. There's no weapons training. Right. You can optionally do those things. And actually I wanted to go do the Marine Corps rifle range and everything when I was at Lejeune, and I never, for whatever reason, could never get clinic coverage to do it. I was really, really angry about that. No.
I'm trying to be hard. Come on.
I like shooting just, recreationally.
Sure.
So it'd be really fun. Like, no, it's like a 2-day course. It's really intense. I'm like, yeah, like that sounds like fun. But anyway, But other than that, I mean, there's, as you well know, more better than I ever would, there's a difference between shooting a target and having an enemy shooting back at you. And that's a whole different universe of preparation. And to have to come into that as a provider and focus on your job and provide care and knowing that you're in imminent danger of your own life is, I mean, that's heroism at its highest level, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And you do sometimes just have to step up. The other thing that I want to bring out in all of this is, and you've alluded to it, you're busy, right? And so you've got, I don't know, 90 seconds, 5 minutes, not an hour to talk to these people and provide the best counsel you can in an instant, and that's hard. I mean, just the pace of work for you all. I mean, look, if anybody's ever been to an ER and seen an ER nurse doing like triage care, that is like a dance. They have it's all economized motion. They're constantly ripping open packages, sticking needles, and doing all kinds of things. It's like, I looked at this lady is like a combat warrior right now because she's got 4 patients, me one of them. I had an infection in a rebuilt ankle. And she did not stop moving and had every garbage can exactly placed. She didn't think about where it was. She was just automated. Yep. And her 8-hour shift or 12 or whatever it was, must have gone by in a minute because she was just nonstop. I never a whole waiting room behind us. And this wasn't like a crazy day. This was just a weekend evening, And so you guys don't have the time to sit and really dig in on very many patients. You can't even go to the damn range, right? I mean, it's crazy the pace that you guys work at day to day.
Yes. And again, thank you for the acknowledgement. And it takes training to get there. I mean, I can think of many times where I treat a lot of acute strokes in the hospital, and, there's typically a dedicated CAT scan machine that takes a picture of the brain, which is part of the stroke protocol. And there are times when I'll have, 2 people, one in each CAT scanner, and then people on deck in the hallway, and you're just going around and like you're saying, I mean, okay, this person, no brain bleed here. This guy gets a blood thinner. Like, nope, that's a brain tumor. That guy's got to go to neurosurgery. This guy's bleeding. We got to, give him this. I mean,
Is this when you? Hey, everybody. I don't know if it's Ryan or myself that's hung up, but I'm going to talk as if I'm the one that's not hung up. I think I'm good. So when Ryan comes back, we'll keep talking with him. Hey, the thing I want you guys to remember is the Break It Down show. If you like the show, subscribe. You can hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever. I don't publish quite often on podcast networks, but YouTube's the place I'd like you to watch, or X. That's a good place. Hey, there's Ryan. Hey. I don't know if you left or I left, but I was talking.
I can hear you, but I lost the video, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
We're good.
Yeah.
Let's just keep rolling.
Yes. We were talking about triage, I think, but feel free to pivot.
No, and the pace of work. I mean, it is remarkable. And again, you get trained for it, and a lot of it's just residency, I would imagine.
It is, yeah. Residency is very much like an apprenticeship. I mean, you go through your undergraduate studies, which has been overhauled substantially on the pre-med track since I've been through it, but there's a lot of probably courses that, in my opinion, aren't necessary to become a doctor. I mean, you have to learn some foundational science, but then medical school is the most relevant because, typically the first year is how does the body work? And second year is sort of what goes wrong? How do you fix it? And then third and fourth year is mostly clinical, where you're actually learning, what do surgeons do? What do neurologists do? And then once you pick what you want to do, then as a resident, you're just doing the thing. I mean, you're learning, okay, here's how a stroke presents. Here's how I treat it. Here's how Alzheimer's presents. Here's how I treat it, so on and so forth. And that may be an interesting tangent to go down if you'd like, but that's part of what got me into what I'm doing now, because I love neurology. I'm fascinated by the brain, but it wasn't really until I left the military that I started to fully appreciate how sad it is that people develop these chronic diseases that lead to preventable issues. I mean, people that end up with heart disease and they have a heart attack, and then they end up with this horrible neurologic injury and they don't wake up from it. Or they've had years of mismanaged blood pressure and cardiovascular and metabolic risk factors. And so then they end up with dementia, and then that's a one-way path. And I have to have that conversation with people. And that's been my job for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been out. And I mean, it truly is sad, Pete. I've tried to tell these people this, and I didn't realize how much I really enjoyed working with younger, healthier people, again, to get Marines and sailors back on the battlefield, as I said, because that's where the money is in terms of, all right, we've got a whole life ahead of you to do the right things and put the right things in place. And I think that's a big part of the message that people just miss, is that you're in control of the vast majority of your health. I mean, depending on the data and the studies you look at, somewhere between 70 to 90% of your health outcomes are from what you do every day. It's not, it's not your genes. Yeah. It's not some predestined thing. I mean, there's some rare genetic conditions that happen. And even with the advent of CRISPR and gene editing technologies that we have, again, that exist today, those may be a thing of the past very soon. So if there's one message for your audience, it's that you're in control. And I mean, what you do every day really matters in terms of preserving your brain health and your body.
I've had Dr. Kabran Shoprik on the show. He's from the Amen Center, and he focuses on brain injuries and recovery from those. And when you talk to folks like you who understand the brain, whether it's the chemical, electronic, physical, whatever that's going to be, that side of it, he said a couple things. He's like, that thing is in a bony bucket, and it's basically the consistency of butter. And I'm like, holy shit, I have been bad to my butter. But it makes you understand, like we talk in terms of, I got a TBI, like how about just BIs? How about just eyes? These things can happen through a lot of different ways. You see a shock wave. When you physically see that shock wave from a bomb go off, you realize you're in front of that thing in a lot of our times. You may not see it because it happens in the moment, but that's doing stuff to you that is hard to account for. And man, how many blows to the brain do I need practicing mixed martial arts? Yeah, you want to do mixed martial arts, that kind of thing, to stay healthy, to stay strong, to be tough, all that kind of thing. But, how much do we need to have contact to the jaw and head area before it's like, it's got to be hard for you to watch stuff like that when you understand how these things work.
It really is. And interestingly, there have been some recent studies on the lack of correlation between a concussion and a traumatic brain injury. And that might sound counterintuitive or funny. Like, what do you mean concussion? Don't get me wrong. Concussions are bad. They should be avoided at all costs. But my point is that it doesn't take that threshold of force to actually knock somebody out or give them this post-concussive syndrome to actually do the damage to the butter, so to speak. Because it's so uniquely sensitive to all these forces. And did you ever see? I think actually the movie was called Concussion with Will Smith. That looked. Steelers. So the whole idea behind that Dr. Amhalu, I think is his name, the study is that the number one position on the football field that had the highest rate of CTE or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is basically premature dementia from just microtrauma, was the center. All right. Yeah. The center on the football field, not the linebacker, not the cornerback. They're getting these just highlight reel hits, right, where they're knocking people out of their cleats. It's that constant contact, play after play, day in, day out, practice after practice, year after year. Just even that minor bumping of heads is enough to do enough damage that over time you get these abnormal proteins that deposit as a response to this chronic neuroinflammation that causes premature brain aging, and that basically gives you premature Alzheimer's, and it's horrible. So yes, it's even this brings up a lot of ethical questions. I mean, should kids be allowed to do full contact karate or even like head a soccer ball? I mean, nonetheless, you got football and rugby and hockey and all the true contact sports. Forget about the money and the opinions and the politics. From a pure brain health perspective, the answer is no. I mean, it's like we're clearly not designed to do that.
Dr. Cabran plays soccer. He's like, I quit heading the ball years ago, right? Because he knows better.
Yep.
And that tells you a lot about how important this is. And I don't want to cut you off because I want you to get back into what you're talking, because you're exactly where I want you to be. But here are two guys who study this noodle we have. And he's like, I absolutely do not run my head into a soccer ball. And we were all told it was no big deal, proper technique and all that kind of thing. But it is a big deal.
We know better now, yeah. And the scarier thing too is that a traumatic brain injury begets more traumatic brain injuries, meaning there's some threshold that appears to change. And you actually do. I mean, I really shouldn't endorse this, but I do follow mixed martial arts. I'm a hopeless fan here, I guess. But you see this with fighters where, somebody has a steel chin or whatever you want to call it, where they can take a lot of punishment, which it still just horrifies me, but for whatever reason can't turn away. But then they cross the threshold where they actually suffer a knockout or they're unconscious, and then it takes way less the next time. And that really concerns me, because I go, okay, what really changed here? I mean, what protective mechanism is somebody's brain or body trying to send them to say, hey, we do not need more of this. We're going to go lights out. So you stop receiving punishment. Yet again, these are athletes and it's their career and they keep doing it. And they're in the gym, and it's just like, oh my goodness, You think about the Muhammad Ali's of the world that, I mean, as a heavyweight took just so much punishment from a George Foreman or just from years of sparring. And I mean, again, very elusive fighter, very skilled guy, but I mean, that's clearly his Parkinson's was a result of his boxing. There's little to no question. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and again, I love it too. I've watched less of it because I understand the damage. I definitely can't stand watching CrossFit people do CrossFit. I'm like, oh my God, please, you guys got to stop. I'll break. I mean, it's a horror show when you watch these things, and it sounds ridiculous to say that, but then you go to these competitions and you're like, no, stop, slow down. Like, it's so horrible. And then, I tell my friends, I'm like, you're going to blow your shoulder out. You're going to ruin your back. These things are going to happen, but they're into it and they dig it. And in the case of MMA, I used to do all that stuff, and I get it. It's very intoxicating. It's great. It feels great afterwards, but you're going to get the same kind of value out of swimming, frankly. Here's one thing that doesn't happen when you swim. Priapus doesn't show up, and you don't go up and go, hey, Priapus just visited me. By the way, everybody's code for having a boner. You get knocked out and you say, did I win? Right? That never happens in swimming. Oh my gosh. And so it is terrifying to me to see someone get knocked that senseless, that some Greek god takes over your dick, and then you think you might have won. That's insane.
Yes, it really is. And to your point about exercise, there are really three main categories that help promote brain health, body health. Obviously, avoiding contact is ideal at all costs. Whether that's shockwaves or somebody's fist or a soccer ball. But so dedicated strength training, there's a very high correlation between hand grip strength, but it's not really what can you squeeze. It's more a reflection of what work have you been doing to get strong enough to be able to lift heavy things, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a very high correlation with strength and aging well. So having not only a longer, what's called lifespan, which is how long we live, but one that people are starting to think more about, and that's this term health span, meaning how long do you live well, meaning that you want to just be able to do all the things that you do now, presumably if you're in decent health, or even rewind the clock 10 or 20 years. Most people would take that body and those abilities over what we have now, right? Just because of we expect to have a decline as we age, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the case if we do the right things. So strength training safely, no hate to the CrossFit community. I know they're very dedicated, fit people, but predisposing to injuries. And I mean, I've seen countless herniated discs and cases of sciatica and who knows what, orthopedic injuries from that kind of thing. Marines too, for what that's worth, the hold my beer, kind of type. So that's one. And then dedicated cardiovascular trainings. That's equally important for different reasons. That helps buffer our metabolic health. So even just a baseline of what's called zone 2 training, which is kind of boring. I mean, it's really like not high intense at all. You're just sort of getting on a bike or a treadmill and kind of cruising, at maybe just a little bit more than what you could comfortably talk, just kind of that pace for 45 to 60 minutes, kind of 150 to 200 minutes a week. That builds up mitochondria in your muscles and helps you basically transfer oxygen for carbon dioxide more efficiently. And that is massively important for all kinds of brain health and longevity mechanisms. And then the third type is a dedicated type called high intensity interval training, or HIIT training, people may be familiar with. So much shorter, very high intense sprint mimickers, that kind of thing. And that can activates a third set of pathways. And then you really need like one or two of those a week. But anyway, if you can do some version of that and you're healthy and able-bodied enough, that's a major pillar. I mean, I have kind of what I call my core four. There's sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management. So an exercise, I don't even know the pillars are even. Exercise is probably the biggest, largest pillar in terms of its effectiveness as a tool to keep us healthy and help keep our brains healthy, equally importantly.
You just mentioned a bunch of shit that's hard to manage. I can't manage myself, partly because of these pillars I got, and I maybe do my best. I want to do my best, right? But and I'm fortunate that I sleep pretty well, although I'm too fat right now, so I have some snoring going on. But how many of my friends, I'm 55, how many of my friends do I know, like, I just can't go to sleep. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to try desperately hard in some facet of our life, whatever it is, like going to work and work-life balance, anybody says work-life balance usually works too much. The same intensity on getting good sleep, setting rules for yourself. Like someone I know has a very strict regimented diet. They have cheat days and all that kind of stuff, but they don't handle the same with the same intensity their sleep, and so they struggle to sleep. And I don't know what their answer is. You can tell them all the things that everybody tells them, but that is to say that's easier said than done is not saying enough.
That's exactly right. And I think that a big area of struggle that I have when I teach this to my clients or to my patients, we're all so busy and we all have so much going on. It really feels like adding an exercise or prioritizing my sleep is like one more thing I have to go do. And when people are busy, they're like, I don't have time for one more thing, right? I mean, that's like I got enough going on in my own life, right? I mean, I'm Pete. I'm running a podcast, and I'm interviewing all these people, and I'm traveling, and that's the life we live, right? That's our culture. But what I really try to get people to hone in on is getting clear on what are your goals in life, what's your purpose, what's your why. I mean, in the military, we always have a mission. There's always a collective purpose there, and I think people lose that when they leave the service, and that's a big issue that veterans run into. Is they go from having this well-supported environment to just being on their own, and they lose a sense of purpose and camaraderie and community. And when people find that on an individual basis, though, they go, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, whatever their thing is. I mean, it's my business, or it's my family, or see my grandkids graduate, whatever that thing is. Right. When you've got clarity on the destination, you can reverse engineer your life around how to get more of that and do more of the thing. Because whatever decision you make is either going to advance you closer to your goal, or it's going to put you further away from your goal. And when people really start to realize that and line that up, I found that they go, oh man, like, yeah, I want to sleep better, because when I sleep better, I know it's better for my health, and I actually feel better. I can show up better as more of myself, right? And when I go exercise, I tend to feel better. I mean, I get stronger. That's going to help me live longer. I can pick the grandkids up and not deal with sore hips and CrossFit back and whatever, right? All those things, right? So I really want to make sure people are clear on that, because there's a ton of fantastic content out there that gives us the how, okay, all right, this is how your body works, and this, and maybe even the why on the why this is important, or what these things change. But really that purpose and mission statement, I think, always needs to be top of mind for people to really understand and be able to dial that in. And there's science behind that too. I mean, that adherence to any kind of program or lifestyle, when people are clear on their goals, is much higher.
Right. It's someone in my life, and so therefore I've collected other people in my life have dementia. These are older folks and everything, but when you go to these homes, you'll see people who are my age, and they're there because that's the best place for them to get care. And it's a dreadful existence. Even if they're pleasant people, they never get to eat what they want reliably again. They never get to get up when they want. And they lose control of their life. And that's if they have any kind of capacity left to make their own decisions. It's a dreadful thing. We don't get to pick our exit for the most part. I mean, most everybody is going to go when I'm going to die peaceful in my bed, surrounded by family. Yeah, maybe, but you can't plan for that. And so whether it's financial or physical or whatever you do, the reality is when your end is there, it might come 10 years before you actually see your end, or 15, because you do end up with dementia or some form of Alzheimer's, any other forms of these things. And it is not gentle business. It is expensive. It's hard on your family. I didn't know there were so many kinds of guilt when you sit across from that loved one and you are forced to. There is no good answer. It's impossible. So, what are your general thoughts on that end of aging? And we're getting better at the geriatric studies, but there aren't schools just cranking out thousands of doctors who focus on this area. Is it neat? Is it niche? Is it boutique? Maybe above that, but not much higher than that.
Yeah. First off, I'm so sorry to hear that you have family members that have or have had dementia, Pete. I mean, that's again, this is unfortunately like I said, a sad part of my conversation with people when I have to make that diagnosis or help people through how families navigate different stages of, oh, well, okay, dad can no longer do this thing. We have to now put help in place to have care in the home or to send them to a facility or what have you. But before we even get there, again, another point I really want to drive home is that these dementia is the end result of probably a 20 or 30 year, maybe even longer process of changes that have accumulated in the body. And one thing that scares me more than anything else, when we look at the science behind this, what are called the hallmarks of aging, which are just the microscopic and the cellular changes that happen in every organ system in our body. I mean, outwardly, maybe it looks like, gray hair, wrinkles, all the normal external aging that we have, but internally is these changes are happening on a microscopic level. If they're happening in neurons, again, there are these processes that are accumulating that your brain is very, very capable at helping you deal with up to a certain threshold. And once you cross that threshold, now I can't remember where I put my keys every day. I don't remember new acquaintances. I can't remember my kid's name. I'm getting lost in the neighborhood. And then we call that dementia. And once you've hit that threshold, there's really no known reversal from that point.
Right.
Minus, again, there's some what are called reversible causes of dementia. Sometimes B vitamins, thyroid, depression. They're different things that can mimic an Alzheimer's type presentation. But if that's truly what it is, if it's truly just cellular aging that's happened too quickly, and that health span is starting to fall off a cliff, which also shortens lifespan, by the way. People that have dementia tend to live less long for a handful of reasons. Then there's not a whole lot to do in modern science, which is very sad. So that's point number one. But once someone's gotten there, this also, I guess we can open up another can of worms, but and maybe this is where you wanted to head with this, but we really, I think, have an unhealthy relationship as a culture with end of life care, and that may be more of an opinion than anything. But we spend, I think the number is like you spend 90 to 95% of all healthcare dollars in the last year, and it's more like the last 6 months that you're alive, right. And sometimes less than that. Because of this last ditch effort we have to do everything possible when really it's time to let someone go. And right. That's another very tough conversation I have to have with people. And I can break down assessments, especially when they're younger, which is tragic, and these things do happen. But when it's somebody who's had 15 or 20 years of a chronic condition like Alzheimer's, and it's time, my experience in that situation is people who haven't had enough time to prepare themselves mentally, emotionally for what's coming. But, we throw a lot of medicine and money and drugs at problems that aren't necessarily fixable, but they're preventable. Meaning if we rewind the clock far enough, we can avoid them entirely by doing the right things. And I think that's the real paradigm shift that we all need to understand. And part of what I'm hoping to help bring to people is to understand that. And I'm not sure if that answered your specific question as far as what do we do when we get there.
Yeah, but no, you're talking about a very important part of this, because we often focus on like, how do I do better where we're in school or in work and everything, but we are not. Look, from my opinion, and I think we agree a lot in this. We're not doing a very good job of understanding what's next. I need to have a will and trust in place. I need to understand what my pulse is. I need to also understand, this is not a hit on you, but when whoever that person's going to be for me shows up at the hospital and they know my pulse and my intentions, they have to defend it like a dragon, because the medical community is like, no, we understand. No care, comfort care only. We just need to put an IV in. And you're like, no, God damn it, because they're doing their job. And so you have to have a warrior on your side who will back you up. And this is a true story. There was an auntie who was passing away. She was trending down and all of a sudden started rallying. And she had a DNR. She had a very strict pulse. And what they found out was someone of a particular faith of religion thought it was a sin to let this person die. And so they started feeding this person. And so I when I say this, I'm illustrating not that person's bad, but you have to understand what you're getting into when your mom, your dad, your cousin, your brother, whoever it's going to be, ends up in a situation like this. It is very hard. And one of the this is me being silly here, but one of the comorbidities of dementia is that this person gets depression, this person gains weight, this person gets a divorce. And I'm not saying these things about me. I'm just saying in general, all of these things happen, and it really destroys lives. And so if you want to protect your loved ones, you've got to take end of life care crazy. Who's the doctor who wrote Being Mortal? Atul Gawande. Have you read that book?
I have not.
Oh, it's fantastic. And he's an oncologist. And he's like, I realized I was trying to save too many people. And I had to be more candid, and I had to lean harder on hospice care, because that a lot of times was the correct answer. Yeah,
you're exactly right, Pete. I a big part of what led me into creating Transcend Health and wanting to go help more people. I hadn't been quite a year, but about 10 months ago, I lost my best friend unexpectedly. It was an accident, but in either case, in the wake of his passing, he was he had some of his estate planning set up. Not to go into it, but there was a lot that was left undone, and helping his family navigate that and understanding where am I in that process? Where's my wife in that process? Where are we? And making sure that we've got the right, our wills and our estate planning, all of it. Because if something happens to either of us, I go, oh my gosh, someone's going to have to deal with all this stuff, right? And making my my healthcare surrogate known, all these things. So you're right. It's not something most people think about until they have a personal experience with it or they're going through it themselves. And I see this every day with providers in the hospital. This is like what we do for a living, right? And people still don't have their stuff together. And it's like, goodness gracious, I find it hard to believe, but I see it.
Here we are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that book by Atul Gawande is great, and it describes several aspects of getting older and dying. And you have to have. So a friend of mine, he wasn't the oldest brother until last summer when he became the oldest brother, and he has a mom to take care of. And he was like, what do I do? I have all these heavy decisions, and he's so conscientious and so emotional about things. And I'm like, you've got to be the boss. You've got to stand up and say, this is the direction you're going. You can change your mind, but you can't fear that responsibility because it's yours. And I think a lot of and he's a person who worked in emergency response, but if you don't have that kind of command experience or seeing good commanders and how they're like, this person's either going to get an Article 15 or be absolved of this potential murder, right? And the bosses can't feel bad about it. He's like, tell me what you know. Okay, here's what happens. All right, we're going to go this direction. We're going to go after him for charges, or we're going to wipe it away and we're going to do this, whatever it is. But if you're not prepared for that kind of leadership, it is heavy. And there's a lot of times when you don't need to race toward, like if someone dies, there's not a lot of things that require a lot of immediate action. You can kind of grieve and take time, but we're desperate to do something. But when we should be doing something, like getting in front of these end of life things or caring for our bodies right now so that 20 years from now, whatever it is, man, we're bad at it. And I'll throw a little number at you, and then I'm going to shut up and let you talk because you're the expert here. It's something like 85% of humans in America after the age of 62 or 65, one of the two, they have 0 full healthy years left in their life. It's a shocking number where there's some significant thing constantly going on, or they're being medicated to it, a pretty severe level, because it's, when we age, it's like laps around the sun, but also, there's a lot of neglect in our welfare and our system.
I would believe that for a lot of reasons. Again, some numbers that are in line with that I'm more familiar with. 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And what that means is that they don't have optimal levels of blood pressure, blood sugar, their weight or body mass index, cholesterol in the bloodstream, fat in the bloodstream. And those aren't just numbers or whatever for you to feel bad about or your doctor to yell at you annually to visit. It's because these things turn into insulin resistance, that turns into diabetes, that turns into kidney and heart disease, that turns into dementia, that shortens people's lives and adds debility in the process. So yeah. And by the way, again, 93%. That's not some people. That's not most people. Right. That's everybody has some version of this. And I believe the number is close to 60%. I don't think it's quite 2/3, but around 60% of Americans live with at least one chronic condition. So to your point about the debility that results from that, and especially after age 60, 65, it's just sad to see. It really is. In different, there are pockets of healthier people. So I've, part of the work I've done in the hospital since I've been out of the military is travel work. So I've gotten to go some neat places. Up and down the East Coast, I've got to Montana, Oregon, Tennessee. I've just sort of hop all around. So you get to see how different people live throughout the country, which is kind of fun. And I'm always inspired when I find, healthy, active, more outdoorsy types that are, are doing more of the right stuff. And it's no surprise. They age well and they're generally healthy. And I grew up in the Southeast, so I'm just very familiar with these stats and I've worked there. But there's literally something called the stroke belt, which is kind of the Alabama through the Carolinas, Georgia, that whole region where we just, I mean, the incidence is through the roof because of the culture. I mean, people, they're less active, more sedentary. They eat more fried food. They have a lot of uncontrolled high blood pressure. Kind of, the whole, like, I was taught, like, clear your plate. It's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Eat enough. I mean, but that stays with people, and so over time, it compounds and contributes to these serious problems that are culturally indoctrinated, and they just don't know any differently. So that's tough to watch and try to break people out of that. But anyway, there not a ways to go there, but that's very in line with what your point you're alluding to about older people.
Yeah.
As well.
And just echoing, I get around, I see a lot of people, and I'm curious about a lot of things. And so I'm not a doctor, but I understand health and everything. I define the South as anywhere where they offer you, when you say, hey, I'd like an iced tea, if they bring you sweet tea as the default, you're in the South, right?
That's probably a good rule.
Yeah, and so if you're in Miami, you're not in the South. You're south of the South. But if you go there, you might get offered. And this is like when you're like in the pink zone, like are you in the South? Are you in the North? If they say, oh, sweet tea, and if they say, wait, what kind of tea do you want? Like, those are variations of it. But you're right. There's a culture thing there that it's heavy for us. We love sugar. We love all these things that are bad for us. And some of it you get to enjoy. I want to eat a piece of cake. I like cake, but I eat too much cake. I eat too much pizza, And so how do I change that? And that's the rub, right? Like, when people ask me about podcasting, like, how do I do this? And I'm like, it's like learning how to swim. And right now you want to swim 200 meters of butterfly. And I'm telling you right now, that's really hard to do. Like, I'll get you in the pool every day. I'll teach you, but you're nowhere near doing butterfly yet, and let alone for 200 meters. Like, no one does that, right? Let's get you to a reasonable goal of 50-meter fly. But they don't want to get in the pool every day. And I don't want to eat out of a macro thing. Like, I don't reliably do. I need to change that, right? This is specifically speaking about me. I need to drop weight. I need to eat better, but I get depressed. I've got this PTSD, and it all kind of undermines my 4 pillars because I give up. And I'm fine. But I'll be honest about this. I have suicidal ideation every day as part of my PTSD. I have ways to deal with it. I handle it. And today it's in control. But these things erode my foundation. And so when I look around and go, how do I go? There's a rowing machine right over there. If I could go row every day, I may not get all of your exercise pillars, but I can do HIIT. I can certainly do zone 2. But I don't do it. It's right there. I live in Southern California, man. I can go outside right now, get a little sunshine on my back, pull on that stick for about half an hour, and I would reliably get better in fast, right? And I like swimming. I haven't swam in months. I need to, but I can't seem to get through and go do those things.
Well, thank you for being so transparent, Pete. And that's that really is another facet that I wish our culture were more open to and open about. And there's this unfortunate dogma that's existed, I think, for the last handful of decades about mental health, largely because it's been poorly understood or misunderstood. And all mental health is a reflection of your brain health. And I don't mean to minimize that whatsoever, because it can result in debilitating clinical effects like PTSD and depression, bipolar, all these things. But it's so important to talk about. So number one, want to validate you and thank you for talking about it and sharing your story, because I can't begin to tell you how many people I encounter that's really the core of the issue. And it takes a long time and a lot of trust for people to bring that up, because it's such a vulnerable thing to share. I mean, to that point, I had until I started going to marriage therapy with my wife about 3 years ago, I had no idea the childhood trauma and stuff I dealt with that I've been able to work through. And that has eliminated so many glass ceilings for me, as far as me being more fully present as myself in the world, being able to open up and share more with people and just be more present, quite frankly, and do a better job for people. And you really hit the nail on the head with this one, because so many people know that they've got to do the 4 pillars, right? But it's, the rowing machine's right there and I can't make myself do it. Why? More often than not, there's something holding people back that is in the mental health realm, that's in their past, that's in some form of trauma they've endured, that either they're too scared to face, it's too painful, or they may not even be aware of it, or some combination. And so mental health is such a, maybe that should be like the foundation to the pillars if I'm constructing a visual, because it truly is that important. And without that piece, and that's part of how that whole purpose and alignment and why filters into this, because that assumes that you've been able to confront or come through any kind of limitations to go, oh yeah, I'm looking forward enough. I have enough goal-directed behavior that I know these are things that I want in my life, and I'm able to integrate them and do more of. But a lot of people never even, make it to the door because they're just held back and they're too scared or nervous. So if you're listening to this, I just want to empower you that it is, not only is it okay to ask for help, you should ask for help and rely on support. It's just so important.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. And you're right. Like, I'm critical when people don't work as hard as they can on sleep or on these things. And I'm guilty of all these things, right? Like, of course I can, there's all kinds of help afforded to me, especially in the veteran community, where if I just ask, if I show up, they will work with me on working on me. But I don't do that. And so there are things that I'm in control of completely that I need to take care of. And thanks for reminding me of that, because, I've been meaning to, and I try to, but man, I could do a whole lot better job of it. And it's stuff I enjoy doing. I said, I was an athlete. I loved PE almost every semester through high school and all of my college. I think I missed 2, and I didn't like it because I loved PE so much, but I don't do anything sporting at all anymore, partly because my body's broken and I've aged out of some of that stuff. But I do know that deep down inside, like if I go swim, and right now I can go get in the pool and I'll go 2,000 meters. It's not a problem. In one haul, it won't be fast, won't be pretty, but I'll do it. And I come out, I feel great. I think I look great. It's a therapy session. I mean, everything about it is because I can swim and I enjoy it. It's like a miracle, but they can't seem to pop through that bubble that allows me to get into the pool.
Right. And that's, again, that's a real challenge for people. And so, I think that's where things like accountability can come in, community support, right? And, the elements, again, back to our time in the military, where you have morning PT and have leadership, have structure. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and lessons to be learned in the civilian community where people can, go join a group class or, have a gym, an accountability partner, a buddy. I mean, or even in our virtual world, there's virtual training sessions you can do where somebody can encourage you on the phone. Some of these devices are maybe a little pricier, but they're even, home devices that have like a Peloton bike is one I could think of that has a screen with either pre-recorded or live classes where you're virtually cycling with people from around the world, potentially around the country. There's so many ways to get involved, and that's, it doesn't even have to be pricey. You can even like, I literally do not have a chair in my office. I stand when I do meetings. I have a standing desk because it helps with my spinal posture. You burn about 50 more calories an hour when you stand anyway. So just by shifting and contracting anti-gravity muscles. So even that is a good place to start for people, just to just try to get some movement, get healthy, get outside, get, like you said, get a little bit of sunlight safely, of course, ideally earlier in the day. That's actually a good mood trick. Do you follow any of Andrew Huberman's work?
I'm aware of it, but I don't really follow it, but I should though.
He's a little north of you, I suppose. He's in the Palo Alto, Stanford area, but he's a professor of neurobiology, has a great podcast, Huberman Lab. I think he puts out fantastic content, but he has popularized the literature behind getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning, which actually helps with deep sleep, because we have this thing called our circadian rhythm that helps keeps us awake in the daytime and helps keep us asleep at night. And you can actually prime that rhythm with getting early morning light when it's kind of the low orange red, like in the morning. But actually that same light projects to a different area of your brain that regulates mood. So actually just watching the sunrise or looking at the sun for about 10 or 15 minutes each day actually substantially contributes to mood. Not to mention that's an activity where you're kind of up and moving anyway, you're outside, makes it more prone to movement. I'm outside anyway. Man, maybe I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll take the dogs out, or maybe I'll just have my coffee and, get a mile or two in or whatever. So just like you said, baby steps first, right? Not trying to swim the 2K, but just getting, moving pebbles before stones before mountains, so to speak.
I love it. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I know you got to hard out another episode to get to. So one, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for letting me just yak your ear off about all kinds of stuff and stand on my soapbox and preach about things. But so everybody just look down below here, transcendenthealthgroup.com. There's all kinds of resources there. There's blogs. A lot of the stuff that we covered is really in the blog, and you can get more there. There's also some subscription help and all kinds of things you can sign up for. And you have a book coming out later this year. So let's talk about that.
Yes. So the book is due to be released around September 10th. It's going to be called The Incredible Brain. And the idea is it's helping people, again, find their why and their purpose. That's how we start. And then walking people through rather, how their brains and their bodies work. And then navigating sort of what can go wrong and some of the things we talked about with the cardiovascular and dementia type processes. And then really how to avoid it, and what are the different lifestyle interventions you can put in place to help people just live longer, healthier, more purposeful lives, because it's absolutely there. I really want people to know that this is not an inevitable fate or diagnosis that we're all destined to endure. There's just a ton of amazing science on the horizon that's already there. I mean, that's the evidence behind what's in the book is already proven studies. And I think as technology continues to accelerate, we are only going to see more exciting changes in the next decade or two, which is really exciting.
When you get the book done, come back on the show and let's talk about it. I'm going to work on getting better at things, because that's where my goal is, right? I'm actually going to go lift a bunch of books and move boxes around here in a few minutes. So sort of a chore-based workout. But I'm definitely going to get on my rower, and definitely going to get in the pool and do that more. And so those are my commitments to myself out loud that I've recorded for all posterity. And that's that. So everybody definitely, for sure, go to that website and go check it out. And when the book comes out, what I always say, buy 2 and buddy read, because for sure you're helping somebody out if you guys get this thing, because look, Ryan knows what he's doing. Anything in closing before we wrap this thing up?
This has been great, Pete. Just thank you for your time and for your attention. And I love it. I mean, I always love talking to fellow veterans and people that know that lingo. That's always a blast. And thank you for sharing your time.
Okay, stand by 1 second. I'll be right